This is the unpoetically named Trim Door and XLCD chapter, Chapter 8. Welcome to Barrett Works. Beginning with the top cover, you've got the choice to put the vent above or below the cover. I put mine below where Prusa's instructions show it. Ifty Tech puts his above. It is entirely up to you. I also had printed before this a whole set of parts for the top panel door mod for Prusa Core One from Imagine 3D. It's up on printables, which changes the top cover from a fixed piece to an opening lid that stays open on its own. I'm not going to install that now. I've laid out the parts, but I'm going to just move on to the next steps and take the printer back into the studio with the top plexiglass just laying in place. I won't install the nylon rivets because I know I'm going to put this modification on. As I begin to assemble the parts for the LCD, there are some useful comments in the Prusa instructions. One is about putting the square nuts into the back part of the mount before you put the LCD panel in place, so that when you're pressing on it and getting them pushed into place, you don't have any risk to the LCD panel. The Prusa instructions talk about putting the LCD assembly on a box because the shaft from the knob protrudes. I went ahead and drilled a 1/2-inch hole in one of the empty boxes and placed it right on the top of a box instead of extending off to the side. As you finish the LCD assembly, the Prusa instructions suggest you go ahead and mount it on the bezel and mount it to the printer. But in the comments, Dan H. Brown and Jasper Swart suggest doing that after you put the door seals on, the weather stripping that seals the door to the frame. That way you don't have to trim the weather seal where it would conflict with the bezel. It just goes behind the bezel very happily. So do those latter steps, 23, 24, and 25, then go back to step 22 and actually mount the bezel. Next up is mounting the door, and I'll point out, if you don't notice, that the door can be mounted either direction. It can open to the left, which is the way it is by default, or it can open to the right. I was going to flip mine around and open it to the right until I realized it opens all the way, a full 180 degrees, which made the difference for being able to use it in the location where I intended to use this printer first. So it hinges on the left and opens to the left. Once the door is attached, you're going to mount the door handle, which the instructions have you doing with adhesive strips that come pre-mounted to the metal handle. However, a number of people in the comments talk about the fact that the handle doesn't necessarily stay attached, and aligning it perfectly takes a bit of a process. Prusa talks you through how to do it. But if you look, notice that the door handle has 2 holes that match up with 2 holes in the door panel. So why use the adhesive at all? As some people in the comments talk about as well, I just bolted mine in place. I used 2 of the nylon lock nuts and did not take the backing off the adhesive strips at all, because if the adhesive strips were exposed, it would have been hard to align the holes. So I just bolted the door handle on. It's been months. It does not move, and it's never going to come loose. At this point, the printer is, in fact, done, and you can see me doing an intermediate belt tensioning. I just wanted to do it and see how they were. I had tensioned them earlier, and I was curious if they were still the same, if anything had changed as the rest of the structure went together. I will be doing another tensioning of the belts later, and in the months since I've been using the printer, I've done a couple as the tensioning process has changed, as some of the recommendations for the belt tension have changed. And the printer has left the building, a pretty definitive indicator that the assembly process is over. I begin cleaning up the shop, turning it back into a wood shop, or whatever I'm going to use it for next. And after that, breaking up all the boxes. You can see I've put them just down on the right during the assembly process. The kit came extremely well packed. It's a lot of cardboard, and after breaking it all down, it entirely filled our large recycle bin. It's me from the present. More than 3 months since you saw me walk out of the shop with that printer and bring it up here to the studio. I wanted to end this series in the present and here in the studio where I began it. First, simplest summary is that this printer has been nearly flawless in 3 months of daily use. Secondly, I connected it to the room's exhaust system. So this flex tube runs up to the port that's in the ceiling and then out through the attic. The problem is that system was designed for multiple printers, but not multiple printers in the closet. There's the XL behind this wall, and the system allows me to connect up to additional printers out in the room. And this hose can be split into multiples. So the exhaust fan that drives the system isn't properly positioned to pull air from this ad hoc position that I created. I put a Y up here and just added this second spot. That means I need to drive the air out from this printer in a different way. So for now, I'm using the built-in fans. I have active air quality monitoring in this space, and I don't have problems with any VOCs or particulates from the Core One or from the XL. Other modifications and changes. I have a holster for flex plates here on the side, and it's a design of my own, which I will be putting up in printables. I use 5 flex plates, 4 actively. I have a pair of PEI smooths and a pair of the textured sheets. The workflow I use is meant to allow me to pull one print off the printer and immediately get started with another. Nothing very special about that, but this allows me to kind of grab a print sheet really easily. So when a print finishes, I pull it off the printer hot, put it on this old print bed from a 3D printer I no longer have, and I have another one here. It magnetizes to that, and the parts can cool there. And this metal plate helps pull the heat. And then I just grab the next flex plate and put it on. So this is truly a holster that just is easy in, easy out, immediately making my flex plates accessible. I installed the opening cover that I talked about during the assembly videos. That gives me direct access to the top of the extruder, for example, to run flexibles straight into it. I also have my own magnetic holders for side cutter, pliers, and a holster for sharps. Sometimes that has a knife in it. It just has the tweezers. And these are my own design that are contoured mounts for magnets that fit the Core One. I've got, just hanging on the side wall here, a spot for my dry boxes. So my filament dry boxes can just be used with this printer. If I have a roll of filament that's not in a box for some reason, I just pop this spool holder, which is on a magnetic mount, in place of the dry box, and I can feed it into the side of the printer. It all works pretty well. I was unavailable. I missed the morning of the Index Founders Edition release from Formnex. I didn't get in the list, and I do not have Index coming in the first round. I really regret that. So this is not going to see Index installed in this first round, this year, in the first quarter when it's predicted to happen. I will put Index on it later. I also have an Obsidian 500 high temperature nozzle, and I'm going to do the high temperature extruder update. That's incompatible with Index, of course. The plan is there'll be a Core 1L, which will have the high temperature extruder installed, and then the Core 1 with Index. Or I'll flip that around depending on when I get the Core 1L. And the XL behind me in the closet will continue to be the large format printer and be the workhorse that it has been for quite a while now. Thank you for watching, particularly for watching through to the end. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and catch us in the next video.
And with that, the wire belt is tensioner up towards the and back across to the extruder mount and insert into the X